want to go. Yes, the time has at last come to close out the run of David Tennant as the Doctor with The End of Time. Parts 1 and 2 together. I do two-parters as one story. So, this is an interesting one to go into because I know that I know actually in fairly heavy detail a lot of the things about this that drive some people, nuts. There are certain fans who really don't like this story. For the most part, I do. It overindulges in a few areas, and some of the stuff that I actually don't mind or even like, I do get why other people don't enjoy it. But this is Davies blowing out what he does with Doctor Who. He does character drama. That's what this is. That's what this leans heavily on. This is what it spends a lot of time really amping up in various ways and various levels. Some may feel it's overdone, but I feel whether you think it's a bit too much or not, it's pretty dang fitting as an end for the Davies era. So, this entire thing with the Master is now back. Oh yeah, spoilers. You should know all this. I'm digging right into this thing. You know, the Master's back, the threat of Gallifrey coming back, the Time Lords, actually seeing them, they pretty much almost make it. Wilf is the companion, Tennant himself, the cactus people, the Vinvachi, I know what they're called. Don't call them cactuses, that's racist. And a lot of absurdity and a very prolonged goodbye, much in the vein of, like, say, Return of the King. So, where to begin? Well, why don't I start with the Master? I know that a lot of people, it seems like particularly classic Who fans, but not exclusively them, really don't like this take on the Master. They don't like the insane metabolism where he's eating people. They don't like the lightning powers. They don't like how bonkers crazy he is. I like this better than John Sim in Series 3. I still wouldn't call it a great Master, but I find this way more compelling than what they were doing with him previously. Because what they were doing before is they were having him engaging in what were supposed to be well thought out, carefully constructed plans, and yet bouncing around like a Looney Tunes cartoon. Here, he's acting crazy. Like, he doesn't have a plan that he couldn't have cobbled together in, like, the last hour. And for the way he's behaving, that fits. And I actually think the whole thing about, his body's falling apart and, he needs... I mean, the idea that he's actually eating people, it's a little silly, but, like, I don't have a problem with that issue. I don't have a problem with, like, the skeletal shifting. I don't even really have a problem with the lightning. Again, it's ridiculous, but the only element about this that is a little much for me is how we get him back in the first place, because... So, hold on. In addition to everything else he was doing, pretending to be Harold Saxon, setting up the Archangel Network so that nobody realized what he was and bought his story and creating that fake story and getting himself into a political position and negotiating with the Toclafane and everything else, he also started up a cult that we never run into up to this point. The cult of Saxon that's using it's a magic potion and a magic ring. And yes, I know the old adage, any technology sufficiently advanced enough will appear like magic. I know that, but like, this is operating like magic, and sometimes I can accept that on Doctor Who, depending on what the source is. When you introduce to me a brand new species that I've never had to deal with before, I'm prepared to accept that they are capable of something that's going to look to me like magic. I mean, I don't love the Carrionites, but that's kind of the basis by which they work. But with the Master, who's a Time Lord who they don't do stuff that just seems like magic for the most part. Not like this, not potions. Yeah, that's... Getting back in the first place is a tough pill to swallow for me, if I'm being completely honest, just because of the method they used to get us there. Once he's back, I like him. I like the energy that John Sim brings to this particular iteration. I really like some of the moments where he really plays up the isolation of his madness. I adore him, getting closer to the Doctor, putting their heads together so that the Doctor hears the drumming. And when the Doctor says he hears it, the Master just goes, "It's real!" Like, he can barely believe it. And like that, I love all that. I think that is great stuff. And as far as his plan goes, yeah, it's ridiculous, but the piece of technology that he manages to come across is utterly ridiculous. And I certainly have no more issue with this than like what he tried to do in the tail end of Legopolis, which actually I didn't buy that at all. But this works for me. I enjoy him here. So for me, he's actually a highlight. Again, I know a lot of people don't like this particular performance of the Master at all. Even folks who like John Sim. I like it. It works for me. I wouldn't want, it works for me as a one-off. I should clarify that. This is not like what I would want the Master to be in future performances. But as a one-off, this is the Master completely unhinged and falling apart. Yeah, this works for me. And, obviously Tennant is bringing his all to this. He's bringing the fun. He's got some good dialogue. He's bringing the feels. Plenty of opportunities for him to do that. I shouldn't even really need to point out that Tennant's just really, really good in this part at this point. If you don't already believe that by the time he's done, then nothing I say is going to change your mind anyway. He's really good. He sells everything that he's given to do, whether it is his anger, his fear, his frustration. In fact, some of the things I think he maybe sells a little too well, but I'll get into some of that a little bit later. Guest cast is fine. We have the characters like Naismith, and his daughter, and they're functional as sort of intermediary villains. We've got the Vinvaci. They're fun. Actually, I like them a lot. I like the whole thing with the shimmer, and the Doctor almost kind of mocking them with it, that they thought they could get away with it around him. And I also actually really like that they neither join in the fight at the end, nor are they in any way punished for fleeing. Because normally, in a story like this, not always Doctor Who, although, yeah, sometimes in Doctor Who, I'm thinking of, the marketing girl in Planet of the Ood, usually characters who have the choice to either join or flee and choose to flee end up dying. It's like, well, yeah, you know what you should have done now, right? But that's not the case here. They're like, okay, we're gone. And they're gone. And that's totally fine. That works for me. The Time Lord's coming back. There's elements of it that I'm iffy on, but I mean, can I just say I love the fact that the thing opens with this voiceover from this commanding voice that we've never heard before. And then to realize at the end that not only is it Timothy Dalton, yes, it's Timothy Dalton heading up the Time Lords, ultimately identified as Rassilon. Yes, again. And I know some people mock the amount of spittle that comes off him. To Gallifrey, to victory. I'm sorry, that is what happens when you have a voice as powerful as Timothy Dalton's and you enunciate properly. I mean, it's like a classic adage of trying to do Shakespeare. If you enunciate that kind of language properly, your scene partner is going to have a nice, lovely coating of saliva on them. It's what happens, and I kind of love that it's captured on film. Now, does Rassilon make a ton of sense and everything else? Well enough for the purpose of the story, I think. I've seen some people be like, that's not how Rassilon should behave. Let's be honest, we've never actually encountered Rassilon in person up until this point. I mean, I maybe turned up in a book somewhere along the way, but I've said before that I don't put too much stock in the canosity of those. But we certainly have the things that we've been told about Rassilon, which is kind of why I like him being identified as Rassilon, because this would mean that this is the reality behind the canonized myth. Like, the Time Lords have their myth of this great founder of their society, and then we meet him, and it's like, oh, dang. And I kind of like that notion, anyways. Getting Donna back was a bit iffy, and it is a little weird that she doesn't really get to share any scenes with Tennant. Not really. But it's still nice to have her back. It's nice to, by the end, ultimately see her happy, or as happy as she's ever going to be, not traveling with the Doctor. But, I mean, I've kind of been putting off, let's talk the true MVP of this story. It is Wilf. Bernard Cribbins is amazing in this. Like, I'm honestly not sure the story would have worked without him. He is sweet and funny and heartbreaking. I think most Doctor Who fans have at least one part of this entire thing that makes them cry. And I know for a lot of people it's the, I don't want to go. That doesn't make me cry. Not even like when I first saw it, it didn't make me cry. You know, it does make me cry though. Wilf giving that last salute. And you see the tears welling up. And yeah, prior to that, he breaks my heart trying to give the Doctor the gun. Breaking down, begging him to take it. Oh, Wilf is so good. National treasure, that man. The character. Maybe Bernard Cribbins, too. I don't know enough about his work outside Doctor Who, but oh my God. Oh my God. So, there are some other things that are a little bit, could use some work. Let's talk about stuff that goes on towards the end. I am not a huge fan of Tennant's hissy fit. Once he realizes that in order to save Wilf, he's going to have to sacrifice himself. And he has this whole, it's not fair. I could have done so much more. And I don't love that. Now, it's not out of character for Tennant as we've come to understand him. I buy it. It's not that I don't believe it. It's not that it's not justified. I just don't like it. There's something about the Doctor being that petulant, that whiny, that human. Like at the very end. I feel like the Regeneration story should bring us the Doctor at his best. And getting this one more, even though Tennant, works his way through it and comes out the other end okay, seeing this one last glimpse of basically this Doctor at his worst, I don't love it. And it's not helped by the fact that in part one, he has the whole conversation with Wilf about dreading regeneration. Because prior to this conversation, regeneration has never, in universe, been treated like a death. Obviously, for fans, it can be that way, but within the story, the Doctor is always comforting if he's explaining regeneration to someone. The moment has been prepared for. All that sort of stuff. He's reassuring. He's not going, oh, woe is me, I'm basically gonna die, even though I'm not really. Like, what? And again, it does suit this particular Doctor to take it a bit more personally and take it in a more human manner and liken it to standard death a bit more. But again, I get it, but I also just don't like it, especially. And again, not because Tennant doesn't play well, he plays it great. Just not a fan. Now, as far as the extended, all the goodbyes, that whole farewell tour, I'm actually okay with it. I know again, it bugs some people. I will say some of the specific beats don't really work. The big one for me is the one with Mickey and Martha, because I'm sorry, that comes literally out of nowhere. Like, did we even see them meet each other, like, properly before? I guess they were in the TARDIS together in Journey's End for like a hot minute. I guess we did see Mickey walk off with Martha and Jack at the end of that. But still, like, that is a big leap, especially given that we knew Martha was engaged to somebody else prior to this, that all of a sudden she and Mickey are married. No. I'm not saying that there's no way I could ever buy it, but for what we've seen, what we know, no, that just seems cheap and dumb. And I don't want to accuse the show of doing this, but it's the first thing that comes to my mind. It's like, oh, the two black characters get married, because of course. And it probably wasn't on purpose, but it's weird. It's weird and it's unearned and it doesn't really work. The goodbye to Sarah Jane, it's brief, I like it. The goodbye to Jack, well, it's kind of a nice note, especially, I don't know if this aired. I think this would have aired after Children of Earth, but definitely internal chronology is after Children of Earth. And it's nice to see Jack, having something, a little comfort. That's nice. I actually really like the thing with the granddaughter of Nurse Redfern. That actually works for me really well. I find that very sweet. The little thing with Rose pretty much works for me. It actually, where it starts to get indulgent again for me, isn't in the farewell tour. Because in many, like, none of these are characters we've seen since this. And, maybe the show and the people involved knew that was going to be the case, that Moffat was going to be dealing pretty much wholly with new characters. Maybe they didn't know, but even if it was just a way to sort of sign off this era, to me, that makes sense. It feels earned. It gets self-indulgent after that last farewell to Rose, and he has this sort of get back to the TARDIS, and it's really prolonged. Then we have the I don't want to go, which I also think is a little bit much. And so, like, that bit doesn't work. But the farewell tour in general, yeah, I buy that. That works. Okay, so because of how long this thing is and how many things go on in it, I do have notes because I don't want to miss, like, the little things that, like, I kind of caught. Let me see what I didn't mention. Oh, it was very odd to me that they referenced the real-life president, that they actually name him as President Obama, and they kind of got a sort of look-alike. Like, that's weird to me. Because Doctor Who has never referenced real-life political figures before. It ends up doing it again later on with Trump. But, I'm pretty sure this is the first time, and it's weird to me. I'm not a huge fan of that. I mean, I guess I kind of get why, given that, historically, this is very clearly our world, yet he's not encountering our political figures. But, I don't know, it's just weird to me. Okay, I want to talk briefly about how prophecy gets used in this story, because it includes examples both of an example of what I think where prophecy works really well, and then embodying why 99 times out of 100 I hate the use of prophecy in narrative. Here's what I like really well. He will knock 4 times. First of all, I like the prophecy in and of itself because it is incredibly vague. It's not clear who it's referring to, what they're knocking on, the context, nothing. And I like that. And obviously, we have a huge red herring in the Master. Because, he's got that beat in his head, that 4-time beat. And he even in the junkyard, he bangs that sort of that drum, the big steel drum 4 times, and like everything is signposted that it's the Master. So I really like that the knocking just ends up being something as innocuous as just Wilf behind the glass. Hey, can you let me out? I like that. I like the misdirection of it, and more than anything, I like that the Doctor, and I guess he tells Wilf, but the Doctor's the only one who knows it. Because my big issue with prophecy more often than not is it's used in place of proper character motivation, and it just has people behave in a way because either the prophecy said they were always going to do that, or they go, oh, the prophecy says this. Well, I have to be sure that I do this to make sure that it happens, or they're behaving in a way strictly because of the prophecy being in place. So it's a MacGuffin. I don't like prophecies as MacGuffin, and the Four Knocks I don't feel is that. The soothsayer, who we get in part 2, who's weird and bonkers and that scribbles on her face. Everything that she spouts and the talking of a prophecy there with the council of the Time Lords, that is the stuff that I don't like and I don't enjoy. And I'm like, oh, stop. So it's funny to me that this ends up having both sort of kind of elements of prophecy that can work for me, or where it usually doesn't. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And coming back to Wilf with the knocking, that whole nuclear vault thing is preposterous. Like, what? Why would you ever set up a system like that? Like, I get it in terms of it always has to be manned and one person can't get out till another person hits the thing on the other side. I get that because it means it's impossible for no one to be for it to be unmanned at any given time. There always has to be someone there because only the next shift can let you out. I get that. But why? Why would the radiation vent through the vault controls? And he has this thing Vinvachi glass, it'll contain the radiation. Well, if it can do that, why don't you have a separate, radiation cage? It's ridiculous. But it's also reverse engineered from the fact that they had to create a scenario where the only thing that could save Wilf was the Doctor doing something self-sacrificing. That's what they came up with. But it's ridiculous on its face. So we've got that. That said, I do kind of like that the show kind of hangs a lampshade on the massive coincidences and the Doctor pointing out, Wilf, we keep running into each other, and that shouldn't be happening. The woman. Now, the woman that Wilf encounters a few times and who the Doctor sees at the end. Now, the big thing that I like about her is, in the episode itself, we are not told who this is. And I love that. And I'm also well aware that Russell T Davies and the other producers are of the opinion, it was their intention, that is the Doctor's mother. And that is fine. That's their headcanon. But they didn't make it explicit in the show, so I don't have to accept that. And I get to choose to believe that that's Romana. And if you would rather it be somebody else, you can believe that. I like that enough is laid out that there's someone who knows the Doctor, who cares about him, that he cares about back, and who's seeing will sort of give him the strength to do what is right. But who that is, you decide. I like it. I like it a lot. What other little notes did I have? Oh, I like that when there's a couple of cute little touches when the Master clones himself into everybody, which again is a little ridiculous, but it's fun ridiculous, that bit. These distinctions are arbitrary, by the way, between ridiculous, I can't swallow it, and fun ridiculous. I know there's no consistency here. It's just how it parses out for me. But I like that in some of the shots, it's very clear that the clothes don't fit him, because the person whose body he took over was larger or smaller. I like that. I also like that the Master doesn't argue with himself, because normally in this sort of setup, especially with the villain, you would expect him to start fighting. He'd start having power struggles with himself. Some being like, why should you get to boss us around just because you're the original? None of that. And I kind of like that, because I would have expected the other thing. I think that's most of the little notes I had. I think this is a good closure. I don't think it's the best finale Davies ever did. It's not his best work, but it does feel like the proper final note in a lot of ways. You know, bringing back the Master one more time. Touching on the Time Lords, you know, in a way that the show hadn't done up to that point. Having this celebration at the end with the farewell tour, it feels appropriate as an ender. So for me, it works. There's weirdness and there's things I don't love, but yeah, it was a good ending, I think. But I also get why certain aspects really bug some fans. But that'll be it for this one, folks. Gonna miss this suit. End of time! You've seen it, what'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments, let's talk about it. Bunch of stuff to do down there as well. There's the like and the subscribe, both of which are greatly appreciated. There's the Patreon, super appreciated. It helps keep the channel going and improve it and help me cover my bills, if I'm being completely honest. But there's that, there's socials, there's the usual stuff. It's all down in the description. Give it a look, give it a click, or don't. I'm not going to tell you what to do, because at the end of the day, folks, it's you who are the council, and I am simply running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.